What did you learn embarrassingly late? Didn't learn until I was 20. White meat and dark meat come from the same chicken. No, they come from white chickens and brown chickens. Thought an orgasm and an organism were the same thing. Gave an entire speech to my class at 13 years old, first month at a new school, about how I wanted to be a marine biologist and work with marine organisms. Everyone was laughing, and I didn't know why. The teacher didn't say anything, just laughed along as well. A girl I'd just made friends with had to fill me in after class. Turns out, they are definitely not the same thing. This pained me to read. My wife told me in 5th grade she did an anti-drug speech and used John Lennon as an example of a successful person who stands against drugs. She liked the Beatles and hated drugs, so she just assumed he would never. I thought buffaloes were birds and buffalo wings were from said birds. Mine was the opposite, thought buffalo wings were from a normal buffalo until like age 17. I was convinced cheese grew on bushes till 12 to 13 years old. My brother is really proud of this. He should be, that's genius. I'd put that shit on my resume. Proficient in convincing my dumb brother that cheese grows on bushes. Up until I was about 15 I was convinced that I lived in the USA. Honestly, I'm not really that embarrassed by it. Growing up I was bombarded with US TV, film, movies. I went on holiday to Florida regularly. I spoke English. I didn't know the difference between England and New England. And to top it all off, as a kid coming from the Northeast I fully thought I lived between Washington, D.C. and New York. I went to York loads as a kid, but it never clicked that I don't ever remember seeing the wall on the TV and there was a distinct lack of skyscrapers. It never clicked until I actually went to New York at about 14 over 15, and it took an 8-hour aeroplane ride rather than an hour's drive. I was fucking dumb as a kid, still am TBH. Martha's Vineyard isn't just some land that rich people went to that was owned by Martha Stewart. For anyone who is also just learning this, Martha's Vineyard is an island near Massachusetts that rich people go to. It's just not owned by Martha Stewart. Glass objects should not be put on the stove. Guess how I learned that? Yup, I learned that with some Pyrex. It said oven safe, so I assumed that also meant stovetop safe. It doesn't. If it has a real handle, then it may be stovetop safe. It may also say stovetop safe and, or have a symbol of a square with 4 circles in it. That my mom pronounces bagels as beagles on purpose to mess with me. English is her second language, so I just always assumed that she didn't know the right pronunciation. I was in my late 20s before I realized it. I should've known. It's definitely something she would do. Everyone knows it's pronounced bagel. Source: I lived in New York. I know what a bagel is. That IHOP is the International House of Pancakes. I never made the connection that they were the same thing, so until recently I thought the International House of Pancakes was like a Hall of Fame type museum restaurant for pancakes. I'm old. Originally IHOP literally had international pancakes on their menu and about 20 flavors of syrup on each table on a carousel. The first time I took my son to IHOP I was telling him the different choices he had for syrup. When I told him boysenberry he freaked out a little because he thought I said poisonberry. What it meant to have your car tires rotated. There was that 70s show joke where Ed asked Eric if he rotated the tires, to which he responded, "Don't they rotate every time I drive?" And I legit did not understand why that wasn't a reasonable answer. Red was going to rotate his foot up Eric's ass for that remark. The proper way to say mythology. It was my favorite subject and I talked about it all the time, and not one person told me it wasn't mythology. Found out when my teacher corrected something I read out loud in English class as a senior in HS. I still cringe. If it helps, I had a substitute film teacher who pronounced genre as Jenna. Vagina and pee-hole are separated. I'm a girl and I only learned this when I was like 13. I was amazed I didn't have to take out a tampon every time I needed to pee. My sister was 25 when she learned that, and she has to pee a lot. I was confused how she went through packet of 50 tampons in 1 month and asked her. Boy, was she surprised when I told her I was circumcised. I never knew I was circumcised until I went to the pediatrician and my mom told the pediatrician that I was circumcised. I always thought it was something just for the Jews. As I'm not Jewish, I figured I was not circumcised. Then in my 20s, I learned that Americans generally get circumcised. Had to make an embarrassing Google search there to learn what not circumcised was. Ambulances don't patrol around like police cars. But in some big cities they do hang around in certain areas that are known to be accident prone during rush hour, plus tow trucks. Or in little towns, when the town's one ambulance goes on a call, the neighboring town's ambulance drives to the halfway point between the towns to be able to respond to either. Till some towns only have one ambulance. Some towns have no ambulance and response times are so long you are better off hitchhiking to the hospital. That my cat didn't go back to the pet store when it was sick. I had even heard all the jokes about pets going to the farm. Still didn't strike me till way too late. When I was in 2nd grade, my hamster died. I wanted to hold a funeral, naturally. Mom insisted on sending him off for an autopsy first. We watched a lot of medical shows, so I was super understanding of why this was necessary. Since the closest facility for hamster autopsies was quite far away, she would send him out, and they would bury him for me, since the return shipping would be traumatic to his poor little hamster remains. After about 6 months of waiting for the autopsy report to come in the mail, I insisted she call and check back in. She said they were working on the report. These things just take time. In 10th grade it hit me. That's pretty shitty. Why not just bury the poor thing? Why go through the trouble of lying like that just to avoid digging a small hole? That guys didn't have to squeeze their dicks to get their pee out. It's like milking a cow. That you can actually perform maintenance on a lawnmower, that is oil changes, and not just but a new one every few years. I moved a lot growing up, and as a result we didn't always hang on to larger appliances, so I was like 21 before I learned lawnmowers aren't basically disposable. We have had the same one for 30 years. Ellen DeGeneres. Jerry Falwell called her Ellen DeGenerate after she came out. She was amused instead of offended. He really said that? I haven't heard that since grade school. I remember being a kid and hearing about her coming out on some radio show. The DJ was talking about how she had come out of the closet exclaiming she was gay. I didn't know the term coming out of the closet, and I knew that Ellen was funny and silly, so I thought she'd actually come out of a closet shouting I'm gay, and I didn't understand what the big deal was, or why on earth that prank was supposed to be funny. It'd be awesome if that was actually the tradition. Like, somebody sits in the closet until someone needs their raincoat, and when the door opens, they leave the closet and tell them they are gay. Pickles are pickled cucumbers. Look me over 30 years to figure that one out. Cucumbers are just pre-pickles. Like grapes are pre-raisins. Brown noses are brown from kissing people's butts. Yeah, I know. Like they're covered in shit. I was in my late 20s when I out that one together. Just learned this from your comment. That several does not in fact mean 7. I still don't know this. I mean, what number is several? More than a few? Less than a dozen? When I was 20, I was presented with a really wonderful promotion. It required me to fly to a nearby state for a week of training. I was super ecstatic about the whole thing until I remembered a friend of mine complaining about her struggles with getting a passport. So, I promptly declined the promotion. My superiors were really stumped as to why I turned down the promotion. Me, unfortunately, I don't have a passport. Manager, boring Barry, you've never flown before, have you? Me, no, I have not. Manager, you don't need a passport to fly within the country. And then it hit me, my friend was going to Mexico. I was just going to a neighboring state. Once the realization hit, my superiors all erupted in laughter. The story itself followed me when I went to training. My trainer personally greeted me and asked me if I had any difficulties getting a passport before laughing. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos.